All righty, welcome everybody. Welcome to this special episode of Brownsville Tech Live. And in the house tonight, we've got Mr. Roy de los Santos. He is currently the city commissioner for District 3, and he's vying for a spot as an at-large member on the city commission. Roy, welcome back on the show. It's been a while.
It has. How are you, Daniel?
Doing good. I mean, I remember when you first came on my show 4 years ago, we were pretty small. We only were on
Yep.
Facebook, and we've kind of grown to about 12 social media platforms since then. And you were actually a contributor to our success. So for that, I thank you. I thank you.
I hope I can continue to do that. I love to be able to drive ratings, and I know usually when I'm on a show, the conversation is very engaging, and people like that.
That definitely is true. And for those of you out there, the comment lines are open. So in a few minutes, we'll transition into a comments area where you can chime in your comments as we go through the podcast tonight. So basically, uh, Commissioner De Los Santos, what made you? Well, first of all, introduce yourself to the viewers out there. For those of you that know you, everybody knows who you are, but for a lot of voters that may not know you, could you kind of give us a little bit of some background about you and why you decided to run for the at-large position?
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So, hello, I am Roy de los Santos, City Commissioner, currently for District 3, seeking the at-large B position on the City Commission. I am a Brownsville native, born and raised, and grew up in the southmost area of town. And my sister and I are in the process of inheriting my father's land out there because he passed a couple of years ago. In fact, in 3 days, it'll be the 2 year anniversary of his passing. But grew up humble means dad was a longshoreman, mom was a housewife until my sister and I were of school age. Back then, there was no pre K. So you were home until you were 5 years old. That's when you could finally go to school. And so mom made sure that she stayed home with us to raise us herself. We had little desks at home and we had lessons every day. And that really helped me and my sister get as far as we have in our lifetimes because we were so well prepared by mom. And afterwards, mom went to work, first with State Farm Insurance, then with the Catholic Diocese of Brownsville for over 19 years. And she's done some time with BISD and the university system, the UT system, but is now assistant to the principal at St. Joseph's Academy, where she's very happy. It's a great environment over there. And I'm very proud of her service there and the community that takes good care of her. From an education perspective, I went to Palm Grove for elementary. I attended Central my seventh grade year and Perkins my eighth grade year. And for high school, I was the first freshman class at Nevada High School when they opened the doors in 1988.
Oh, wow.
Following that, I went on to get a degree in marketing management for my undergrad, and now I also hold a master's in business administration. Professionally, I've got background in the hospitality industry, which I absolutely loved, working for different properties such as the Sheraton, the Holiday Inn. I worked at Rancho Viejo. I worked for the Fort Brown before they closed down, and that was probably one of my favorites. I've got background in the healthcare field, having worked doing billing, medical billing in the home health area, and also public relations in the home health area and in the physical therapy division, and also as a director for adult daycare centers for a time. And that was all before I joined AT&T. And AT&T was by far my longest with 25 years of service to the company. I started off as a Spanish-speaking billing operator and worked my way up through the ranks. And when I left, I was a senior manager for customer experience for all of our retail stores nationwide. Prior to that, I was senior manager for customer experience for all of our video products and also handled executive complaints and regulatory issues and marketing and advertising.
Wow, that's quite an impressive resume, Mr. De Los Santos. I'm glad to know that you're a fellow uh, Southmost Villian, as I
Oh,
call it, because I'm
yes.
actually from Southmost myself. I grew up down there. I went to Cromac. Then I actually went over to Oliveda, and then I came back and graduated from Porter. So
Nice.
it's nice to be able to have a fellow person from Southmost
You know,
on the
and I
city
and I think
commission.
growing up that way, it really helps shape the character of the individuals who grow up like that. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been so drawn to a lot of the nonprofit work that I've done in the community over the years. Very, very proud of the impact we're having in those areas, but I really credit my upbringing with that.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of, talk about some of the successes over the last 4 years as a sitting commissioner for District Three. What are you most proud of over the last 4 years that you've been able to do?
I think I would say there's a couple of things I'm most proud of. First and foremost, I'm most proud of being part of the administration where we're developing a comprehensive capital improvement plan and moving forward with that. Infrastructure is a very, very important need in our city. And as someone who's lived in Brownsville most of his life, I can say that there are streets that had been neglected for generations. And for the first time, we have a team that's really focused on doing this the right way, on rebuilding streets, not just resurfacing. And this isn't just a plan that's being talked about. You can look around to see streets that have already been completed with Jose Marti and Stagecoach. And I know there have been streets paved in several neighborhoods throughout the city. Sections of Price Road, sections of Old Port Isabel Road have been done. And you can see today the construction that's happening on Old Highway 77. That's one of the biggest projects we're undertaking, and that will be followed by a rebuild of 14th Street, Old Alice Road, and then Coffeeport Roads. And there's still lots of work to be done on smaller connectors like Danette, Stillman, Lomax, and Myers Roads. Those are also very important to us. And we have a great engineering and public works department that has empowered the frontline workers to make sure they're going out there and taking care of a lot of this in-house, which speeds up the process and saves the taxpayers money. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. In addition, I think taking care of employees, our frontline workers, is one of the most important responsibilities we have as a commissioner. When I took office, employees had not had a raise in several years. And I'm proud to say that since then, they now have had two raises, including cost of living adjustment this year. And we work hard on the benefits side of it. We've had some setbacks in that area. I know I was one of the champions for trying to maintain healthcare benefits for our retirees who have put in 20 years of service and retire at 55 and older. That's a fight that I lost, but I'm proud to say that we were able to bring back some of those benefits to any individuals that had seniority 20 years or more. And starting at age 60 to 65, the city will pay for their health care until they're Medicare eligible. But there's still a lot more work we need to do in this area. I understand we can't afford free health care for everyone forever. And I think those that are younger generation coming into the city will be able to pick and choose what they want to do with their career path to ensure they're prepared for retirement. But those employees that have already put in years of service and likely passed up other career opportunities in anticipation of the great benefits the city had, it's a travesty to have that taken away from them when they're so close to the finish line. And that's something I hope to bring back during my second term as commissioner.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, I can tell you that, when you're between 60 and 65, it's a tough area, especially if you are a widow or you're in that gap, and when you're kind of waiting for Medicare and you're not able to get it because you're too young for Medicare, you know.
Mhm.
So it definitely
And
is
not poor
something.
enough for Medicaid.
Exactly, exactly. So,
Yeah.
um, and I know that in the past you had been a regular on my cousin's show at Osmo, and obviously,
Yes.
we did lose him. But one of the things that I know he advocated quite a bit was bus stops, and I know that a lot of times when you were on his show, you kind of gave us tabs with regards to where the bus stop upgrades were. Where are we at? I know I've seen a lot of new bus stops, but have we completed that project, or is there a lot more to go?
No, it's still not complete. We're continuing to add more every year. We're very thankful to the support of BCIC to help make some of this possible. But yeah, for about 3 years in a row now, the city has consistently put in new bus stops every year. And I'm very proud of that because we all know how hot it is in South Texas.
Oh yeah.
The challenge then becomes the position of the sun in the sky because I've seen bus stops that have a full shelter and the sun is directly hitting it. So folks are still standing behind the shelter or under the shade trees because they're not getting the shade directly at that shelter. But we are still chipping away at that problem because we know how important an issue it is. And yeah, at Osmo, I miss him dearly. I'm so proud of the friendship I got to build with him. over these last several years, because I know he started off as one of my biggest critics, and we ended up as really close friends, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely miss him. Believe it or not, every day he's on my mind.
Yeah.
And you and I have personally talked about the situation before. It's been tough on all of us, but we
Yes.
appreciate your friendship throughout the years, and obviously your participation on his show. So, one of the things I wanted to give you an opportunity is to kind of outlay what you'd like to accomplish over the next 4 years, should you be elected once again.
So definitely continuing the work we're doing on infrastructure. I'm proud to say that at the time I got elected, the building standards in our city were incredibly low. And that had caused in years past developments that had come up, new neighborhoods that had come up that have flooding problems. And that should not be the case. When you're building a brand new neighborhood, it should be built to withstand all of that. Luckily, we have raised those development standards, and that was something that I helped champion with our engineering and public works department and our planning and redevelopment department. So now when new neighborhoods are coming online, the city should not have to go in after we take control of those streets and start to work on flooding problems. They should already be in great shape, and that allows us to focus our attention and our resources on the existing problems that have been around for generations. Already, I've heard from several folks about flooding they used to see in their neighborhoods in years past. That is nowhere near as severe as it was, or as it had been back then with more recent floods. And I know just last week, the week before, when we had the big rain incident here in the valley,
Right.
Brownsville fared better than most cities, in part because of less rainfall, but also in part because of the amazing work of the men and women at the city of Brownsville in prepping to ensure our drains were clear and our gates were open to allow waters to flow. And I kept in touch with one of the residents in Tradition Estates because that's one of the worst flooding areas in District 3. They traditionally have water in their homes. And I reached out to the resident that night of the flooding, and she was indicating to me that the city had been out, had turned on the pumps early, the water had been under control, and they had no water in their home this time. So we're making progress. The next big thing we're looking at is relief for the Four Corners area. Boca Chica and Four Corners, from Old Port Isabel to Four Corners, has always been horrible when we have a lot of rain. There is a solution. There's always a solution. Any engineer can tell you that. It's usually a question of can we afford it? But like I say, these guys have really put their nose to the grindstone and worked on a great capital improvement plan. And there is water retention areas that are being built, or we're going to work on acquiring the land first and then building these areas so that we can provide relief to over 1,000 homes in the Four Corners area.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned, we definitely did fare better than everybody else in the valley. I mean, I was in shock when I saw the videos of McAllen. I mean, some of the areas, the nicer areas like Ware Road and some of those places were severely underwater. There was a video of a hospital that had water running through it. I mean, Harlingen, their airport, their runway got messed up. The flights were canceled for like several days. Even me
Mm-hmm.
driving up to Austin this past weekend, as you're driving up 77, if you look on either side, I mean, there's some areas that are still flooded. It's just incredible.
Yes.
But, and honestly, when the rain started and everything, oh God, I said, here we go again. And I can just see the Facebook social media trolls, go on a rampage, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I was expecting it. I could just see all the negative Nancy's out there, and we just fared better y pues como dicen, se les cayó la boca, so to
Yes.
speak. And
Gracias a Dios.
gracias a Dios, ¿verdad? And I am very glad that, we fared so much better than everybody else did. I mean, that's not to say that I'm anyway happy that everybody else went through it, but
Of course.
definitely I've been through it before and it's just been tough, so
No, and I'm proud to say that I was contacted the day after the floods by Senator Adam Hinojosa's office, offering assistance to see what they could do to help. And I was speaking to his chief of staff, Royce, and I was very happy to be able to say that Brownsville had fared better than the other cities in the valley. And And I know our emergency management teams and first responders were aiding other neighboring cities here in the valley that had a greater need for us at that time. But I'm proud of the partnerships that we've got that we've seen over the years, and that everybody's willing to help out, whether it's our city or another city that's in need after a disaster like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I was very impressed over the last 2 or 3 weeks, Commissioner Dos Santos, was the state of the state of the city address a few
Yes.
weeks ago. One of the things that I see, and it doesn't take a whole lot to see, that there appears to be a cohesiveness among everybody
Yes.
on the city commission and the city management. And I'll be honest with you, that presentation kicked ass. this
Thank you.
this past.
Just proud to be a part of it. We've
I
got a
mean,
great team.
what do you think? I mean, have things changed? I mean, we've always, we have other governmental entities where bickering is a constant. You know, what do you think has changed? I mean, it was just very impressive, the cohesiveness.
I think you're absolutely right. That's the perfect word to describe the body today. And I think this started under Mayor Trey Mendez, where we really were moving in the right direction as far as being more professional and getting rid of any private agendas or personal agendas. And I'm proud to say that with everyone I've served with, from the previous commissioners in District 1 and 2 who are no longer with us, to the newer commissioners that we have today, that this has always been a group that is focused on improving Brownsville. We may disagree sometimes on what the best path is to achieve that, but there's no doubt in my mind that everybody wants what's best for Brownsville, and it's not about anything personal for them. And I'm very, very proud of that.
What do you think are some of the challenges that we have as a city coming up? Obviously, we're experiencing tremendous economic growth, and obviously that brings opportunities as well as challenges. What do you think some of those are?
So ensuring we've got affordable housing is definitely one of the big challenges out there, because as demand continues to increase, and it's not just demand from people who are moving to this area, but I think there are also a lot of real estate speculators who are buying properties here in town in anticipation of them going up in value in the future. I know when I divorced in 2020, I sold my house, and a year later, it was resold. No one had ever moved in. They had put some money in to make improvements and resold it for a markup of $105,000. And the
Wow.
individual who bought it has never moved in. Every time I drive by, it still sits vacant. There doesn't even appear that they're using it as a rental property, because I don't see any furniture inside when I drive by. And it's people who are not from Texas.
Yeah.
So I expect that that's contributing to the higher demand. And as long as that's the case, it's going to continue to raise prices both for rentals and for building and purchasing. So it's important that we keep in mind that while we are a city that is seeing tremendous growth and progress, we're still also a city that sees a higher number than most other cities when it comes to the percentage of our population that's living below the poverty line. So we need to make sure we maintain some balance. I'm proud of what we're attracting, and it's definitely moving us in the right direction, and that should allow us to keep that focus on those most in need in our community.
One of the um, criticisms that I've heard in the past, and I don't know if it's fair to necessarily place blame, but a lot of people blame SpaceX for the high valuation of property. What's your take? Is that a fair assumption to make? Do you think that SpaceX is totally irresponsible? I mean, keep in mind that values have gone up everywhere. It's just not here in Brownsville.
Exactly. And even before SpaceX moved to Brownsville, property values would continue to increase every year with the appraisal district. I think anybody who's ever paid property taxes knows that. Does it contribute to an acceleration? Very likely. I don't think it's a huge contributor. I think it's a smaller contributor, but I think it's several factors, from the booming industry at the Port of Brownsville to people who just like relocating this area because of the affordable cost of living. Because even as prices rise, we're still much more affordable than other parts of the country. So all of those contribute to the rising cost issue, and that is something that we need to focus on. And we need to be able to identify what our best alternatives are. And I know one of those topics is coming up later this evening, because I know it's one of your favorites when we talk about the multi-venue. But when we talk about generating more sales taxes.
Right.
That's both tourism and getting businesses open quicker, and also ensuring we're attracting people from outside to come and see concerts and shows and everything else here in our town, not going somewhere else to do that.
Right. I wanted to talk a little bit about Starbase Incorporation. You know, there's a lot of
Yes.
people that are upset because I guess they thought they were going to be able to vote uh, for Starbase Incorporation, and it turns out that only the people that live at Starbase will get to vote. But I know that
And
there's
that's
been a
as it
lot of,
should be.
yeah, and there's been a lot of chatter out there on the social media sphere by some of my other fellow podcasters. You know, they've been claiming that Brownsville is going to lose if Starbase incorporates, and I personally don't believe so.
No.
But you know, one of the things that I mentioned is that you know the incorporation, and I don't have any inside information. I don't pick Elon's brain, but you know, one of his biggest challenges down there is he doesn't have enough land to for manufacturing right now or for launchpad capability. And you know, while there has been an announcement of executive homes down there, I don't think the majority of it is going to be residential. I think it's going to be manufacturing and launch capability. I mean, what's your take? Is Brownsville going to lose, or is Cameron County in general going to lose by incorporation, or do you think there'll be a gain from people wanting to that work for SpaceX or move down to work for SpaceX to actually look for homes around the surrounding communities?
There's no doubt in my mind there is absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain, because this shows further commitment by SpaceX and the Musk family and Musk Foundation to this area. And that's a win because, as you say, they are not going to have enough land out there for everything they're going to need as their needs continue to grow, which means they're going to be building towards Brownsville. They're going to be using that connector to the port of Brownsville to possibly do manufacturing in that area. And that's a big win because that's more jobs, that's more property tax revenue for Cameron County from industry, not from individual homeowners. So those are big pluses. And honestly, there's nothing that cannot be built today out there that could be built tomorrow by them incorporating. That doesn't exist. If anything,
Right.
they're creating a little bureaucracy for themselves because now it won't just be the county laws and county standards, but they'll also have those of the municipality of Starbase Texas that they'll have to contend with.
Now, do you foresee us providing any kind of services to them, or will they incorporate their own police force, fire? I mean, you know, as a city, I mean, I know Rancho Viejo has their own little police force and their fire department. Do you see them doing the same thing, or will they rely on us?
I think we'll probably see a hybrid model. It wouldn't surprise me if they have their own law enforcement, but I believe we're already in talks with SpaceX about building a firehouse out there completely at the expense of SpaceX for the equipment, the facility, everything else, and then working on an agreement with the city of Brownsville for staffing it. The thing to keep in mind is that this is not extra demand per se, because already today we service so many of the unincorporated areas that surround Brownsville, and we receive a very small amount of reimbursement from an emergency services district fund. When we have Starbase Texas as a municipality that we can work directly with and enter into an agreements with, the reimbursement rate for the services we provide will go back to being what our cost is, so that our taxpayers are not footing the bill, but we're ensuring the safety of everyone in the area.
And with regards to expansion eastward, do you envision that the city of Brownsville will extend its boundaries eastward? I know they announced some upgrades to Highway 4. Is that something that we're dealing with, or is it the state going to be the one that foots the bill for that?
That's going to be the state of Texas and the city of Brownsville. Both elected officials and administration have been actively lobbying the Texas Department of Transportation. We had face-to-face meetings with them during Brownsville Day at the Capitol earlier this year. And the focus is, yeah, on redoing State Highway 4, which is Boca Chica going out to the beach, and not just to repair the repairs that are drastically needed, but not just to repair it, but actually to expand it to a 4-lane highway with 2 lanes in each direction, and built to a standard where it can support the weight of the traffic that's going out there.
Yeah.
One of the big problems we see right now is that SpaceX does not have direct utilities connected to them. There's no water main that goes out there to supply them with all the water they need, like we have here in town. A lot of that is trucked in.
Oh,
So
wow.
the more they need, the more trucks that are going over that road and just tearing up Boca Chica. So we need to build roads that are capable of handling that kind of traffic, especially when you consider they want to ramp up to 25 launches a year.
Correct.
That means more and more traffic. So Boca Chica has to be rebuilt to a much higher standard. But yeah, it needs to be the state of Texas that helps take care of that, not the people of Brownsville.
Yeah, there are plans right now for doing up to 25 launches, and in fact, once Starship operations starts going, there may be more than 25 launches, both not just here but even at the Cape. The problem
Absolutely.
that SpaceX has right now at the Cape is that they're leasing Launch Pad 39A and 39B, and if for those of us of a certain age, we are very familiar with 39A and B because they were part of the Apollo launch missions and they were also part of the space shuttle missions. And one of the problems I know in the last administration was the fact that there was a concern by the NASA officials at the time that, should Starship explode, that they were concerned about the status of 39A and B. And they're still getting a little bit of you know kickback from NASA over that whole thing with 39A. In addition, they've got to compete with ULA and they've got to compete also with Blue Origin and Space Force.
Yes,
So, if Elon's schedule is accurate, where he wants to launch hundreds of starships per year, the only way he can do that is to launch from both sites. There's absolutely no way that he can do 25 launches uh, just at the Cape alone. I know that people have said, "Oh, it's just R&D," but logistically speaking, I don't see how he can only do it in one place and not the other. So that's good news for Brownsville, right? And
absolutely.
one of the things, I don't know if you're free to speak about this yet or not, but there was an announcement, I believe, during the State of the City or maybe slightly afterwards of an actual SpaceX Tier 1 supplier relocating to the area. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I do not have information that I can divulge about that right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I do know that they're a supplier of locks that I know. So okay, that's fair. That's not a problem.
Absolutely.
Um, let's see here. Yes. So basically, one of the things I wanted to touch on, obviously, as you mentioned, it's been one of my favorite topics, has been the multi-venue. And of course, as you know, it's been up for a vote twice before and it lost by a little bit. I don't want to tell the ones that are against it that they some of them claim they won by a majority. Nope, they just lost by a few votes. But anyway, I won't rub it in. Uh, But one of the things that I've talked about with the other candidates is that we've learned a lot of things since the last vote. One of the things is we did find out that UTRGV announced that they were no longer going to have graduation ceremonies for the graduates here in Brownsville. And they
Correct.
claimed that one of the reasons was because it was outside, there was not enough room. At the end of the day, families are going to have to travel to Edinburgh to watch their kids graduate from college. And then we also found out that Sam Stadium was inadequate, not only in capacity, but also in parking. With
Mhm.
regards to a playoff football game that Veterans Memorial participated in, about a year or so ago. But besides that, and we know we don't have adequate facilities, and we haven't had them for a long time. But the biggest issue, I think, is what I consider the money drain, right? The drain that continues to flow from Cameron County to Hidalgo County. Every other week I see social media posts where people complain about our sales tax revenue and our sales tax collection and that we're lower this year than we were last year. And look at Hidalgo County. Their sales taxes are always high and up. And I'm like, well, yeah, when the folks here in Cameron County travel to Edinburgh to go watch a concert, to see a monster truck, to see Disney on Ice, to see, you know, Chiquita, which I'm hoping one day she comes over. uh, not only do they go and watch the concert, okay, but they also go out there to eat, and
Yes.
they go out there and they shop at their malls, and they go
Mhm.
out there. If they're too tipsy or they're too tired, they're going to stay and pay their hot tax, right? And
Yes, they're
so
going to
of
pay their hot tax, and when they buy the ticket for whatever event they're going to at that venue, they're paying an extra fee that goes to support that venue.
exactly. So, we're actually making them rich. And
Oh God, yes.
so, the question that I have is, and I'm not advocating that this should be a city responsibility, right? I'm not
Right.
advocating that. I mean, I've always thought that, it should be a collective responsibility across several entities. But what's your take, Commissioner, with regards to the venue? Should we pursue it? Should we not? And could you talk a little bit about, if you can and if you know, the funding part of it? What's the hot tax? Because there seems to be a lot of confusion out there being peddled, when it comes to what the hot tax is, who pays for it, and of course taxes in general, property values. Will they go up? Will they not? What's your take?
So, do we need it and should we advocate for it? Yes, absolutely. Every time I hear people say vote no, they have no substantive reasons for that or behind that. And when we talk about the economic drain, you're absolutely right on that. Right now, we're facing one of our biggest problems is property taxes and people not being able to afford the way they're advancing. The best relief for that is to increase our tourist dollars and our sales tax revenues. And this is just one of several different ways that we can achieve that. And like you say, it's coming in to stay at a hotel, coming in to eat at the restaurants, coming in for the event at the venue. All of that contributes. So while some folks just want to look at, well, how much is going to be made off the ticket for the venue and does that support it? That's not the true picture of the full economic impact of having a facility like this in your county. And yes, I've traveled to Hidalgo before to go to concerts and events. And even within the county, I've been to South Padre because we don't have anything big enough in Brownsville or in other cities. And for the cities that are north of Brownsville that worry about this being in the Brownsville city limit, I would say to you guys, number one, I think Los Fresnos probably has the closest hotels to the area that this would be in. And when you think about folks coming from the upper valley to attend events at this facility, when they decide to go to dinner afterwards, chances are they're not going to drive further into Brownsville to find a place to eat. Chances are they're going to go and stop along San Benito, Harlingen, or one of the cities as they go back home, which means every city really does stand to benefit, and the county as a whole stands to benefit. And this really is something that will contribute to stronger sales tax numbers, taking the pressure off us needing to supplement everything with the property tax.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, there just appears to be a lot of confusion out there. I've always, one of the things that, when I've talked to individuals say, well, I don't want to pay a hot tax. Well, you typically won't. I
Yeah,
said
unless you're staying at
most,
a hotel in the county, yeah, you're not
right.
paying that.
I mean, the thing is most of us don't stay at our local hotels, right? I mean,
Right.
at most we may go to the island, but at that point, we're tourists just like anybody else is, if you really think about it.
Exactly.
I mean, so we should pay that hot tax if we were going to stay down there, right? So, but there's a
Absolutely.
lot of confusion. I mean, there's a lot of confusion. I've seen the uptick recently in social media, and I'm like, you people are rehashing the same story over and over again with no substantive facts to back this up. And my friend, Carlos Cascos, I that was one of the things that, him and he had been on my show several times and we just didn't agree on.
Yes.
And I bless his heart, but I just think that, there is a benefit to having this venue in more ways than one, so
Without a doubt.
yeah.
And yeah, I've got a funny story about Carlos Cascos. The first encounter I had with him, this was back around the time my father was a commissioner for the Port of Brownsville. So the family was well known at that point. and I was the chairman of college Republicans. And a lot of people were just shocked because the De Los Santos family has been a strong Democratic family and Union family for generations. And there was a road that had washed out in Carlos Gasco's precinct as when he was a county commissioner, when he was a Democratic county commissioner.
Right.
And so I call him up and I got him directly when I phoned. And I said, no, Mr. Cascos, this is Roy de los Santos. And you could tell he was thrown off because he was expecting my father's voice when he heard that name.
Yeah.
And he knew it wasn't dad talking to him. He's like, Roy? And I said, I'm Roy Jr. He says, oh, the Republican. And I love that he went on later to switch parties and become a Republican county judge for Cameron County. But yeah, I always had great times with Carlos Gascos. I think he did an amazing job as a public servant. And it's a shame that we didn't have him with us longer.
I know. I miss him myself. The last time that I spoke to him, I was, as you know, I was in the hospital about a year ago, severely sick up in Houston, and
Hmm.
he gave me a call to give me a little bit of a pep talk. He was just recovering himself from heart surgery he had had a few months prior, so he was giving me a few pep talks as I was headed into surgery and so forth, and I really appreciated him. And he was a great guest on my show, and I miss him dearly.
Yes,
Even if I didn't agree with him at times, I still enjoyed having him on the show, and
absolutely.
he's definitely missed. One of the other things I want to talk to you a little bit about, and I know that you're prior, you're a district commissioner, but obviously now you're vying for an at-large
Yes,
position. But one of the areas I want to talk about was about the airport. Um, Obviously, one of the problems that we continue to have is we seem to have a problem when trying to get people to fly Brownsville. I know that we can't necessarily compete on price when it comes to competing with Southwest, but what can we do to get people to fly Brownsville? I know there's been attempts in the past to lure ultra low cost carriers. I'm not sure if, in retrospect, that was the ideal thing to do. I mean, obviously, you could fly out to a place for like 39 bucks, but then by the time you added everything else, it kind of was on par with a ticket, on
mhm.
United or American. And as we all know, the industry has changed. I mean, it has changed. We've got less airlines today than we used to have, 10, 20, even 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yep.
And not only that, everybody is charging. Even Southwest now is
Yes.
charging for bags. So it's a mute point to even argue about the baggage fee at this point. But what's your take? What can we do to increase people flying out of Brownsville? Is there opportunities for additional carriers? Do you foresee an international route, excuse me, being successful? What's your take? Because there's people. I mean, when I used to work in McAllen, I'll be honest with you, I used to have friends of mine that would probably yank my chain, and they said, "You guys have an airport?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we do." But it sounds funny, but there's people that really don't know, and so what's your take? What can we do? I
And
know
it's
there's
funny
been great
because
strides.
after the flooding and storms we had, the Brownsville airport was the one airport that stayed open.
I know, right?
So that's a testament to what we have built, and it's a great thing. I think the teams that we've got out there we've got an amazing airport board. Citizens who serve on that board are very interested in the success of the airport, are incredibly engaged. They come from a wide area of expertise. We've got a great administration at the airport with our director and his staff. I think they're putting forth the best effort they can with what they've got to work with. And being a marketing guy by nature, and even before I had my degree, marketing was naturally in my blood. I can tell you it's still about the product. And right now, the product is the smaller planes and the higher fares if you fly Brownsville. As where if you're flying out of Harlingen, you've got bigger planes, lower fares. And that is the bottom line. It's not going to be about how many more airlines we bring in. It's not going to be about how many more routes we add. The key is the current routes, Dallas, Houston, Austin, at a more competitive price.
Hmm.
And I want people to fly American and United here out of Brownsville, but I also want United and American to charge Brownsville the same rates that they're charging in Harlingen, because I know for a fact
Why do you
that
think
the
there's a price
fares are
differential? Why do you think there is a price differential just between those airlines?
the competition is one big part of it. And as it's been explained to me in the past, is Harlingen is considered more of an airport where people are going to fly to for vacation, and
Mm,
Brownsville's more business travel. And with business travel, you figure everything's getting written off anyway, so you can charge a higher rate because the
right.
individual's not paying it. And that's part of the problem. And I know we have capacity to expand further and add more terminals, more gates to the terminal that we have, and that is in the works. The team is working aggressively on that, but it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter how many airlines and how many routes until we're competing for Dallas and Houston. And I think the city of Brownsville needs to continue to aggressively go after a low-cost carrier who will come to town, service those routes, and help drive competition to bring the prices down. Or for American and Delta to just bring, and United to bring the prices down automatically on their own to make sure that we're on par with Harlingen, because at the end of the day, when people are feeling the economic pressure that they are for several reasons, saving $50 to $100 each way on a plane ticket makes a difference.
What if you don't mind me asking, what do you think contributed to Avello pulling out? Was it really because they didn't have demand, or do you think it was just part of their business model and strategy?
Oh no, I really think it was, yeah, the demand wasn't there. I think then their business model is definitely to go into a market where you're going to receive a subsidy so that you're not taking all of the risk. But at the end of the day, they know that subsidy is not going to be there forever, and they need to see a median or an average ridership for their planes, and for their flights. And if they're not, you'll see a spike at the beginning when you launch and something's new. Everybody's going to want to jump on, especially for a $39 flight. But over the long term, if you're not able to maintain a number that would make it cost effective for you to continue to operate, then I understand the need to pull out. But
Yeah.
I think it's not about LA and Orlando and Vegas. Those are nice things to have, but the top priority for Brownsville has to be bringing down the rates to fly to Dallas and fly to Houston, and hopefully have a direct flight to Austin out of Brownsville. I think
Right.
that would make us much more competitive. And once we see the demand starting to balance out, then hopefully we'll get the bigger planes here in Brownsville, and not have the smaller ones anymore.
One of the things that, people I know, chime in about quite a bit on social media is, because I monitor the comments on the airport Facebook page quite a bit. And I know that, a lot of people talk about international flights and so forth. Do you think we could, I mean, I know that there's a small airline right now servicing Monterrey, and I'm not sure how well they're doing, but
Mhm.
do you think that we could effectively lure an international flight to Mexico City or Cancun or even Monterrey, a bigger flight, um, considering that there's also competition across the border, right, by Matamoros and Reynosa? Now, keep in mind that, those flights, I think they're not even like daily flights. They're like once a week flights in some cases. I mean, do you think there's the possibility that we could support that? I mean, I know that Viva Aerobus tried in Harlingen and failed, right?
Yeah.
The only one that's done, I think, a little better is Aeromexico out of McAllen, right? But what's your take? Should we pursue any
No.
international
And you
destinations?
said two different things there. First, is it feasible that we could lure an international flight, an international carrier? Absolutely. But will the market support it?
Yeah,
That's something I just don't know. And when you consider that Harlingen has tried before and seen those routes go away, McAllen has tried routes before and seen them go away, it's hard to find something that's self-sustaining given the population we have down here.
right.
I think Aris has the right model for right now because it is a smaller flight. So it's much easier. It keeps the cost lower for them to and from Monterrey. And I'm hopeful that they're seeing volume that is enough to get them to stay even after the subsidies go away. And if that happens, then that would make Mexico City more viable as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I mentioned in the last podcast, and I had not really mentioned it before, I had read on an aviation journal that IDUS is one of the first airlines to possibly in the future upgrade their fleet to an all electric model that's being built by Embraer. Now, I'm not sure if I'm very comfortable about flying on an all electric model, but they do have several planes on order because Embraer is building, and I even was reading today that Airbus is actually building also an all electric model. Like I said, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but
Right.
that's one thing to mention that they do have several planes on order for an all electric model. So
Now that's exciting. I hope to see that in the near future. And I hope it's as reliable as the current flights that we see. And I don't know what the difference is from the battery weight for an electric plane versus the weight of fuel. And if that'll make for a lighter and less costly flight, you just never know. But I'm hopeful.
yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's one of those things. I actually, believe it or not, I had not ridden on an EV vehicle up until a few weeks ago. A friend of mine bought himself. He didn't buy himself a Tesla. He bought himself a Cadillac Optic, which is
Nice.
their EV model, and I've got to say I was pretty impressed, right? I was pretty impressed
Mhm.
with the model. I know that it appears that one of the things talking about EVs, I usually joke around and say that Brownsville is the Tesla capital of the world because you see more Teslas here than you do anywhere in the valley, right? Not only
Yeah.
that, even upstate. Uh, so it was just kind of interesting to be able to ride in something like that, so
No, and I've been in a few electric vehicles.
do
Several
you own
members
one
of the
or no?
commission.
Do you
I
own
do
one or
not.
no?
I drive a 10-year-old Ford. I've got a Ford Expedition, and this is probably the third or fourth Expedition I've had.
Yeah,
And before that, I was a Chevy guy and had Suburbans and pickups. But once I drove my first Ford, I fell in love with it, and I
yeah,
don't see myself straying too far from it. The big selling point for me is the keypad, so
right.
that you don't need a fob, you don't need a key. So when I go out to the beach or when I go out on the water, do anything else, if I want to leave everything in the vehicle, including my phone and my keys, I can and
Right.
just use the keypad to get in. I don't have to take stuff with me. So I know folks are always like, well, you can unlock it from your phone. I don't want to have to carry my phone. I don't want to have to need that. I don't want to have to worry about did my battery die and now I can't get into my car. I
Right.
like that keypad and I'm very proud of Ford for keeping those.
Well, definitely. It's one of those things that, they're nice, but I still believe that I'm comfortable with gas, at least for now.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to touch on a little bit is with regards to with regards to the current situation with immigration, I know it's not a city responsibility, but there's been other cities, primarily McAllen, which has been pretty forthcoming when it comes to whether their local law enforcement will participate in immigration raids. As most
Mhm.
people know tonight, the Supreme Court actually ruled that deportations can continue to happen. Should the city of Brownsville go as far as McAllen has and says that our police officers will not participate in those immigration raids, considering that we are a benefactor of federal funds, or do you think we should participate, have our policemen?
We're a border city, so we're in a unique position. And granted, you've got immigration issues on almost every city now in the US, given the influxes that we've seen. When it comes to our local law enforcement, the priority is protecting and serving the public. And the team we have has done an amazing job, and that's why we're one of the safest cities in America. And I'm very proud of our law enforcement for that. When it comes to federal officers having to come in and do something within our boundaries, we still have to look at it from the perspective of, is there a possible threat to public safety? Is this something that's going to be an easy in and out? Someone's going to go willingly? Or are we talking about someone that needs to be apprehended that might be armed and might be dangerous? And could that result in some type of activity that could then endanger civilians in the nearby area? So I think our department will most likely weigh those factors. And if there's support that needs to be offered to ensure the safety of greater Brownsville, I expect we will do that, but I don't expect our guys are going to be enforcing federal law and executing federal warrants. I think their focus is protecting and serving the people of Brownsville.
Yeah, I mean, because as you've heard, Los Fresnos has been hit quite a bit the
Yes,
past few weeks, and it's been kind of one of those things you don't know. You hear all kinds of stories. That some people were harboring, that some people were, targeted. For whatever reason.
right.
You know, uh, uh, just your own personal take. Should schools and churches be off limits?
In my opinion, yes, they should. Schools, number one, because you're talking about children, and a school should not be a place that you're afraid to go. And that's where you go to learn. It, there are other places if you need to go after children or families with children than going to the schools. And same with churches. Our churches in this country, regardless of denomination, have always been holy places and places that we respect. And unless there's a situation where they're harboring someone that's going to be a threat to public safety and to life and property, then no, I don't think we should be going into churches to apprehend. If they're willing to stay within those confines and they're peaceful, I don't think we should go onto holy ground to do that. I think we'll have other opportunities, and if necessary, we should take advantage of those rather than going against something that has been tradition in this country since its foundation.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about is with regards to downtown, and obviously Sombrero Fest. You're the
Yes.
expert. You're the expert when it comes to Sombrero Fest, right? And
I
as
am
you
one of the chief architects. I'm not the only one. We've got an amazing team that has been part of building this success, but I am one of the chief architects.
well, one of the things I want to talk about, Mr. D, is that you've heard the complaints from people a lot of times. Oh,
Yes.
it's cramped and it's crowded. It takes forever to get in. I can't always get tickets. I do know, or I don't know what the numbers were in the end that Thursday, but they were pretty high as far as attendance for some of those concerts. You've heard the stories. People say, "Why can't we have it at the sports park?" Uh, what's your take? I mean, you're the expert. I mean, what do you think? Should it remain where it's at today?
Absolutely, without a doubt, and for several reasons. First and foremost, the tradition and part of the success of Sombrero Festival is feeding off of the Charades parade route. When corporate sponsors ask us, when should we be prepared for peak times? What are your peak times? We say as soon as the parade's over, that's when peak time starts.
Mhm.
Because we absolutely see the influx and see the park start to fill up when that parade lets out. And I know people come downtown and it's of course tough to get a parking spot. So when you get your parking spot, you don't want to give it up. So you'll come to the festival early, then go to the parade, then come back to the festival without having to lose your parking space. And I know I'm the type of individual that if I had to go across town and there was a lot of traffic as the parade's letting out, I'd want to go home and wait it out until traffic is lighter, which means I'm spending fewer hours and fewer dollars at the event, which impacts its success. Or even worse, I get comfortable at home and say, mañana voy. And then again, fewer dollars, fewer hours, which economically impacts the event. So the tradition is one of the big components of it. The second and possibly more important component is that there is no park in the city of Brownsville today that has the electrical infrastructure to be able to support Sombrero Festival. When I got involved with them 20 years ago, if a food vendor plugged in too many warmers, they would knock out five other vendors.
Oh wow.
There were years that transformers would blow up during the festival and half the park would go dark, and it would be 2 to 3 hours until PUB was out there and got it replaced. And my hat is off to PUB for responding so quickly. And I think that's not a bad turnaround time when you have a transformer blow. But in the years since, Sombrero Festival has invested more than six figures into that park. And part of that investment was about upgrading the electrical to ensure that now every booth and every vendor can have a dedicated circuit if they need it. They're not affecting anybody else. We're not going to risk blowing transformers. And even for the main stage, which is traditionally in the AT&T parking lot, We now have two power poles that are both three-phase just for the stage lights and sound. Another one on the opposite end of the park for the big tent. So the investment has been significant. When we've talked about alternative areas like the sports park, I continue to hear we can bring in generators for you. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe in running an event on generators. I believe generators should be for backup and not your primary. And I'd even talked to Ernesto Gomez about Cascade Park because he was willing to host us as well. But when I talked to him about the electrical needs, same scenario. They don't have the electrical infrastructure to support something of this magnitude. So
Right.
that's the second reason, tradition. And then also nobody has the infrastructure to support it. The third thing I would say is the economic impact of Sombrero Festival in the downtown area, from just the mom and pop that live around there that might rent out space on their property to rent cars or to park cars. And I know some folks, the closer you get, the higher they're charging. I think I even heard one charging $50 per car this year. He didn't have a lot of people, but he was right next to the gate. So I understand. But I know the Presbyterian Church right on the corner, or right behind the corner of 7th and Jefferson, we had approached them about using their lots one year because as we grew, we needed more space. And they said, well, if you can make up what we're bringing in on parking cars and we can talk. They bring in about $15,000 a year parking cars in
Wow.
just those 3 days. So that's very significant. Aside from that, I know downtown businesses, that is the busiest weekend of the year for them. Some of those business owners have told me that they did a month's worth of sales in just those 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And I'm very proud to hear that. Others said their Thursday was triple what their records had been. Some of them said this was the best weekend they've had in the 4 years since they've been open. And that's directly related to Sombrero Festival. And if you think about Sports Park, there's no restaurants, there's no businesses, there's nothing that anybody can walk to right afterwards, which means they're getting their car and driving somewhere. A good percentage of them will just drive home. As we're here, they want to let traffic die down again, so they'll go downtown and have dinner, have drinks, spend money, and that's good for sales tax revenue and stimulating the economy. So the economic impact of Sombrero Festival, especially for that area of town, is another key reason to keep it where it is.
I want to talk a little bit. I was a little surprised. I saw it on social media. I didn't realize that it had happened. Is the Brownsville Fine Arts Museum open or not? I've heard
It,
different stories.
it is not open at this time. No.
Okay.
The restaurant is, Crepe Town is still open for business, but the facility where the museum was occupying space, no, that is not open at present. There is currently an open call for proposals from anyone in the community who has an idea for what they would want to do there. They'll have to submit a business plan and different ideas. I believe this Wednesday, the city's offering a walkthrough for interested parties, and the deadline would be April 28th to
Okay.
submit your proposal for consideration by the city commission. And from my perspective as a commissioner, I think what I would be looking for is one, something that's going to have a very positive impact in the area, not just culturally, but economically, and something that is self-sustaining so that the city is not having to go in and bail them out every year.
Right.
I think we want to see something that's a net add to the district, to the downtown area, to the midi cultural district.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the upgrades that have been going on with Linear Park? I know the cannery has been something that's been worked on. Can you give us a little bit of an update on what's going on there? When will it be open for business?
I'm hoping third quarter of this year, but as we've seen, it continued to get pushed back and pushed back. I believe now we're at the point where we're bringing most of the finish in-house. And I can say that I have greater confidence in our guys doing this in-house than I would on any contractor at this point because of the problems that they have with the staffing and the workforce and having to subcontract and having people not show. It's been a challenge. So I think when we put our guys boots on the ground, they're going to make things happen. So by the end of third quarter this year, I'm hopeful we'll be fully operational there at the cannery. That's going to be a great addition. It already looks beautiful. That should be in operation 3 or 4 days a week, not just like farmers market on Saturdays, but several days throughout the week with a commercial kitchen for an incubator for small businesses. that want to start producing their products for sale. Then, of course, the Food Bank of the Rio Grande Valley is a partner there, and they'll have a food pantry there at the facility as well. And that's a great ad for the area because we know when we saw it during the pandemic, the families that were in need. And even today, when different groups have food giveaways, the lines still start hours and hours before the distribution does. And that just speaks to the need that still exists in our community.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that was held was a First Friday this past week or this weekend. I was really surprised of how much attendance. I think it was one of the largest ones so far, right? Downtown.
First Friday?
I think it was First Friday, wasn't it?
Yes, this past Friday, First Friday with the Spasmatics.
Right.
Yes, so let me say first and foremost that the Spasmatics were brought in as part of a grant from the Musk Foundation.
Ah,
And traditionally First Friday, when in months where you don't have Charo days, traditionally First Friday is the busiest day of the month for a lot of those downtown businesses in that perimeter. So being able to bring in bands like that, and I know Alan Garces, the downtown manager, is talking about ensuring we include local bands as the openers for any shows on First Friday and still spreading out other local talent at establishments across the downtown area. That's all going to be a net positive for the First Friday experience. And also the downtown connector with B Metro. They've got, I believe it's 3 electric vans that they're running as a shuttle. It's part of a pilot program right now. It runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 7 p.m. to midnight. And the route goes by the parking garage for anyone that wants to park at the parking garage. It also goes up Elizabeth in the Palm Lounge, Monarca area, Pluton area, and by the old HEB, which has turned their parking into a surface parking lot. So there's definitely more opportunities coming online for people to come down and park and have a much better experience on Friday night or any night of the week downtown. We know we see greater police presence already. We're making greater investments in keeping downtown cleaner and reducing the number of folks who are soliciting, especially after dark downtown. And I know there's some other local developers that have just secured a lease agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation to start to put parking under the overpass between 12th and 14th Streets. And hopefully we'll be able to add them to the route so that people can park there as well and then come straight into downtown or into the Midi Cultural District.
yeah, that's one of the things that I know that I've talked about in some of the other interviews was the parking situation, right? Obviously downtown, right? I know that a few times that I've been down there, it seems very difficult to park, especially when you want to go eat or, drink or whatever downtown. It appears to be difficult. And one of the other previous candidates mentioned, the lack of or the possibility of doing away with parallel parking in favor of oh, I don't know what's it called, angle parking. They claim
I
that
know what
like
you're talking about. Yeah, the problem with that is that's either one, it's going to narrow the amount of space in the street for traffic, or two, we're going to have to cut into the sidewalks to allow enough space for cars to park in that direction. And that might make our sidewalks a little too tight. So I
yeah.
don't know that I would support that. I understand the perception out there because this is a smaller town, but I know I've never had a problem parking downtown. And most especially if I'm willing to walk a block or two. It's when you're trying to park on the block where you're going that yes, it can be a challenge because chances are you're going to a popular place. But if you're willing to walk a block to a block and a half to get there, you should have no trouble finding parking, whether it's on Jefferson Street or closer towards the Washington Park area. There's still plenty of parking down there, and much of that, there's no meters yet in that area. And it's just a couple of blocks up to the Market Square district.
I know that there's been talk about apparently building a parking garage for the zoo as part of the zoo expansion. Do you envision
Yes.
additional parking garages around the downtown area? I mean, I know we have one now that's available
We
to us
do,
again.
and my understanding is there are plans for at least one additional, possibly along Levee somewhere. And again, it would be probably not centrally located for downtown, but it would be in an area where it's easy to service a shuttle to and from that lot to ensure easy access to downtown.
Do you have any? any information with regards to the county project for the riverfront property? Is there any movement there whatsoever? I know there's been talk for many years about that, and I know recently they did incorporate a TIRZ, I believe, for that riverfront
Yes.
property.
So, and actually, there's been even more development since then. So, the TERS that had been created by Cameron County has now been dissolved, as I understand it. And the county and the city are now working together on an expanded downtown TERS that now includes all of the land for what is to be the riverfront esplanade. This is both city and county working on this, and I know with some of the gains we saw in the legislature in the previous session, we now have access to some of the state hotel occupancy tax monies that can be put into facilities that are going to generate tourism, and that may be a candidate for that among others in our community. So I think we're starting to see progress where it had kind of stalled in previous years, and I'm very optimistic because the potential for what they want to build down there is huge for the downtown area. The economic impact is just out of this world if they hit a home run with this. So we need to be responsible with what we commit to with regard to public resources and public monies. We want to make sure that it's an investment and that we're going to see return on that investment and not treating it like welfare to a corporation or a business owner. But I
Right.
think these guys have a proven track record and have a solid vision. So I'm optimistic that things will go well. It'll take some time to see it come to fruition, but the stars little by little are starting to align.
I know that, they're currently right now upgrading the El Jardín Hotel. I think part of it is going to
Yes.
be affordable housing, and I think the bottom section I had heard it was going to be retail. Is there any plans for the Capitol Theater at this time? Or I know that they were gutting it a couple of months ago for some reason or
They
another.
were, and it needed it because after the roof had collapsed, everything inside was just a mess. So it needed to be cleaned out. I'm not aware of any concrete plans for it yet. It is still a city asset. We'd love to get it back on the tax rolls, generating revenue. But we also want to ensure that whoever buys it is going to do something that lends itself to the area. We don't want something that's going to stick out like a sore thumb. We want something that's going to go great with downtown Brownsville and keep the image of the historical preservation district. Um, because downtown is an incredible treasure. So we need to make sure we continue to nurture it. And we want someone who will also want to restore as much of the facade of the Capitol as they can to the original and potentially the interior if there's a good business model for it.
One of the viewers out there is asking, and I don't know if you've got any information, they're asking, why did the city close the Fine Arts Museum? Do you have any background info on that you could share?
Yeah, I can tell you guys that from what I know about the situation as a whole is the Museum of Fine Art was struggling financially for several years, and the city had come in with grants before to try and help them out. I know the Mitty Foundation had given grants in the past to help them out as well, but at the end of the day, they were still just treading water as the facility continued to age. And it was a building that belonged to them, or at least that they held a note on. The land belongs to the city of Brownsville, but the building did belong to the Museum of Fine Art. But when it was crystal clear that it was no longer feasible, rather than have it just be foreclosed on by the bank and not knowing who could potentially buy it, the city made the decision to go in there and take that over. So we paid off what was owed for the construction, we paid off what was owed for the mortgage, and it's still a bargain price even at that price. But that's to ensure that what happens in that area again is going to be a great fit for where it is because you're talking about Linear Park, you're talking about Gladys Porter Zoo, Camille Playhouse, the Children's Museum. That's a very, very important area and tourist attractor for our city. So we don't want to have something in there that's just going to completely upset that balance. So I think the city did the responsible thing in going in there to bail it out. And now what we're doing is we've got that proposal period open and up until April 28th. For any entities that are interested in putting forth ideas, please send them in to us. I know we're looking forward to seeing those. My colleagues and I have talked about that for a few months now. And we're hopeful to be able to get back to nurturing the arts, culture, things of that nature still in that facility and giving a place to our artists who I know are struggling for places right now to be able to come in and paint. we need to be able to give them space again. So hopefully, whatever proposal is at the forefront throughout this process is something that incorporates that in some way, shape, or form.
One of the things I know I had not asked in the last several interviews with regards to the zoo, I will say that if maybe about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, there was a couple of renditions that were released. I don't know who released them with regards to the zoo upgrades, right? The expansion of the
Yes.
zoo. I know there was some criticism out there with regards to the hotel. People are questioning why are we building a hotel down there? I mean, I can see the parking garage, right? Because there is a
Mhm.
parking problem, but somebody was saying, well, if they build a hotel, you'll be able to touch. Come on, YouTube, come on, kick in. All right, we're back. I
I'm seeing your
apologize.
alien logo. I'm not seeing your face yet.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. There we go.
There we go.
All right, everybody. We apologize. Just a few technical difficulties. But as we were talking about the zoo and the upgrades. There was a little bit of a controversy when that initially was released with regards to the hotel and so forth. What can you tell us? Where is that project at? What do you see uh, going on there with the zoo?
That is part of a much larger master plan for Gladys Porter Zoo that includes first retrofitting the current zoo footprint and enhancing it, and that's why they're adding things like the zip line. But there are exhibits there that need to be modified because as the AZA continues to increase the standards and the space requirements for different species, we've got to ensure we're keeping up with that, or we risk losing those animals and we risk losing accreditation. And if we lose accreditation, then programs that are incredibly valuable, like the endangered species breeding programs, those would be at risk. And animals that we bring in for the breeding programs would have to be returned to their home zoos if Gladys Porter